Hello there and welcome to my presentation. Today's presentation, my topic is social work and current social work practice. So we're going to be looking at the historical development of social work and how these practices relate to contemporary practice, the roles of social worker in current practice settings, the impact of the law on the role of the social worker, the key requirements of the professional body related to the role of social worker, and we'll be looking at the organisation of social work and social care services in the statutory, voluntary and independent sectors, and the main purpose and values of social work. So looking back at social work in the 19th and 20th century, it's quite an inspiring and interesting history. It's been interesting to learn about. So in 1835, the Border Guardians were groups of people that were elected by people who paid, that was called ratepayers at the time. They paid taxes and they paid for sort of maintenances in the areas. They elected people from each parish who would represent each parish, and they were the poor law system, and they managed operating workhouses, and they were responsible for sanitary issues and things. In 1869, the charitable organisation Society at the time were the first point of contact for in aiding the poor. Their professional and administrative skills actually formed the basis for casework. They actually are still going today. The name's changed to Family Action, which is a family support charity. I'm going to be looking more into the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children in the next slide, but in 1875, thanks to Henry Bergh and others, the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children was formed, which was the first child protection agency in the world. And then in 1889, Jane Addams and a social activist, along with Ellen Gatestar, founded Hull House, a social settlement in rural Illinois, Chicago. They offered substantial social services from the settlement, and they made referrals for healthcare, and it also housed a lot of social activists would do work there, and they'd discuss different sort of social issues. And then in 1898, the first social class offered at Columbia University. The New York College of Science and Columbia University partnered up to develop and offer the first social work class. So going back to the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, this is a really sad story of a little girl, Mary Ellen McCormack. She was 8 years old, and Etta Wheeler, who was a missionary at the time, was approached by the little girl's neighbour who had concerns. So upon investigation, Etta found that there was abuse going on. So her case went to court. Etta Wheeler approached the then head of the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, Henry Bergh, to assist with the case, and they won. And this led to the first creation of the first child protection agency in the world, thanks to their efforts. Mary Richmond, another inspiring lady. She was regarded as the mother of social work. She started casework and person-centred care plans. She made a historic speech calling for all schools to teach social work in 1897, and she established the basis for the scientific methodology development of professional social work in her book Social Diagnosis, published in 1917. So fast forward to the present, you need a degree in social work or equivalent, satisfactory to Social Work England. The learning programmes provide students with social work theory, ethics and practical skills. And once you have your degree, you can register to practice as a social worker. So the social workers' roles, of course, depend on which area they're working in. So you've got child protection, mental health, adult social care, disability services, addictions, criminal rehabilitation, and social work in schools and hospitals. So if looking at the process of social services, so in the first instance, there would be an assessment. In the first instance, the social worker should try to gain consent from the individual for the assessment. If the social worker cannot gain consent, unless there's immediate risk, then a court order should be obtained. Assessments could involve visits to the home, speaking with family members, and liaising with other professionals working with the individual. So if it was a child that was being assessed, the social worker would visit the school and talk to teachers. And then decision is basically deciding on an outcome and deciding on what support needs to be put into place for that individual and their circumstance. And obviously you would need to explain your decision to the social worker, to the individual, So, and then we have planning, which would be the next step. And this is where the social worker would plan what support needs to be put into place. So if there's any treatment that needs to be arranged, or any programmes, and sometimes the individual may be involved when a plan of action is being put into place. And then the next step is the intervention. This is basically where the social worker will make changes or help the individual to make changes to their situation. Intervention counselling kind of do get confused at times. Counselling is giving advice, whereas intervention is more, sometimes the social worker will have the responsibility to direct the individual to the best course of action in the intervention. There's many different approaches to the intervention, and the approach, of course, depends on the individual and their individual circumstance, and the intervention helps with the overall strategy. And then the evaluation, although social workers should be continuously evaluating their work, the evaluation will look at whether the intervention has achieved its desired outcomes. So in child protection, a social worker has a legal obligation to investigate concerns that a child is at risk of harm or neglect. This may involve speaking with the child, speaking to people who are involved in the child's life, other professionals. A social worker should be able to identify signs of abuse or neglect, and of course act accordingly. So if a child protection order needs to be put in place, then it should be. Mental health. So social workers help support people who are struggling with their mental health. So first, the social worker will assess whether the individual is at risk to themselves or others. And during a mental health emergency, the social worker will arrange appropriate care provisions and mental health services. So adult social care, it is a social worker's responsibility to safeguard vulnerable adults and help support them to attain their independence and access to valuable resources, and also support not just the individual but the individual's families too. In the disability services, a social worker plays a vital role in assisting those with disabilities with either physical or emotional support. And then addictions may involve helping the individual access rehabilitation centres and mental health services. And then the social worker also has roles in criminal rehabilitation, social work in schools and in hospitals. So the law is the framework for social work. The law is also vital for when explaining legal processes to service users. So the Children's Act 1989, it starts the legal base for child protection and welfare and the welfare of children in England and Wales. The Human Rights Act 1998, it requires the social worker to base all decision making on the fundamental rights of every person that they work with. The Equality Act 2010 protects individuals from discrimination at work or in society. So you can't discriminated for, but not limited to age, sex, sexuality, identity, nationality. And then you have the Children's Social Work Act, which is there to support and protect the welfare of children and support care leavers and looked after children. And these laws regulate social workers. So the key requirements of a professional body related to the social worker. So the Social Work England, have a set professional, educational and training standards that a social worker must understand and follow during practice. So the social worker must promote the rights, strengths and well-being of all people, their families and their communities. So this is understanding the importance of family and relationships and advocating for people to be the leaders of their own lives. Maintain confidentiality and protect a person's right to privacy. So this means not sharing sensitive information unless you're, of course, given consent by the individual, and, of course, explain the reason for sharing the information. And also to protect and maintain confidentiality, protecting storing records securely. Always conduct yourself in a respectful manner and have professional integrity. So be kind, respectful and responsible in the workplace. Follow ethical guidelines and report concerns. So if you have any concerns in the workplace, you can report these to your manager and follow the policies and complaints procedures of your organisation. And if you are not able to resolve your issue locally, you can also go to Social Work England and complain. Be responsible for the quality of your practice and decisions you make. So take accountability for your practice, own up to errors, and trust your own judgment. Take accountability for your practice, maintain continuing professional development. So this could mean participating in informal and formal learning opportunities, work a reflective practice. So you can do this by keeping notes of your practice. You can even ask your manager for feedback, and then communicate effectively. So to communicate effectively, you'll need to listen to the individual and understand them, and be culturally sensitive. The organisations of social work and social care services in the statutory sector, which is the local authority, who are the police, NHS, children's social care, first point of contact for safeguarding leads. So they would be the first point of contact for when abuse or neglect or criminal behaviour may be apparent. If protection is needed to be put into place or their care provisions managed, social workers have a legal obligation to safeguard people. And then you have the third sector, which is the voluntary sector, and they have specialists and up-to-date knowledge of current social issues and provide services within the community. So the voluntary sector have led the way in the distribution of care for decades, long before contracts began. They often liaise with the local authority and pave the way for new ideas. And then lastly, the independent sector, usually self-employed, usually have years of practice under their belts, and they are advocates for the elderly. So they own predominantly all the residential homes and some nursing homes, but their main area of focus is helping individuals live independently in their own home. And they are now in demand more than ever with an ageing population. Just looking back, it's important for all three sectors to communicate effectively. The pay across all three divisions vary, and training will also differ. Each local authority sector needs to operate a local safeguarding children's board and assist with the welfare of service users. Current practice is also guided by the third sector, and statutory social workers are often working with voluntary colleagues in a number of other settings, and representatives of each sector meet regularly to discuss important issues, and this makes for more ideas for delivery of service. So social work values. So your values are your belief system and what you believe to be right or wrong. So in the social work context, it's what qualities you would have that would be valuable in social work. So have integrity and a strong moral compass. So to be a good person and base your thinking on the greater good, and do not abuse your position. Promote human dignity and well-being. So that means treating people with respect, promote the involvement of the individual in the services, and empower the individual and make them feel like they're capable of that change. Stand against oppression and work an anti-discriminatory practice. So recognise and challenge oppression, respect individual perspective, and promote diversity. Understand and acknowledge the importance of family and relationships. So work a family-centred practice, connect families together, and build relationships with family members. And lastly, reflective practice and continuous personal and professional development. So turn your experiences into learning, work a reflective practice and make positive changes to your future practice. Assess your actions, decisions and experiences. And lastly, the main purposes of social work is to support those who are vulnerable, oppressed, or living in poverty, improve their quality of life. So you are an advocate for these people, and you create a safe space for them to express their needs to you and empower them to be the leaders of their own lives and prioritise well-being. Support the development of children and help parents enhance parenting skills. So understand child development, notice patterns and changes in a child's development that are typical or not so typical, and also help the parents support the child. Protect children and vulnerable adults from harm and neglect and arrange appropriate care provisions. So investigate if there is a risk, involve police if necessary, support victims, prevent harm by taking action, offer support and guidance and access to resources. So build trust with service users, understand their needs and work with other professionals and agencies to assess resources that address the individual need. And then lastly, advocate all forms of social justice. So promote policy reform, take part in political action and raise public awareness. So we've looked into the development of social work historically and how these changes have affected today. I'm incredibly inspired. I'm so glad that I've learned about these incredibly inspiring people who have made social work what it is today. And I would like to end with a lovely statement from Pema Chodron, and it says, compassion becomes real when we recognise our shared humanity. And social work really is all about compassion and humanity. So thank you.